Well, it's time, and Colin and Xander, be sure to send me that email to remind me that you are participating today on Zoom. And so we're going back to South Asia, and there's a lot more to be looked at. And what I want to kind of preface all of this by saying, first of all, this picture is of Shiva, and Shiva is a warrior god and very prominent in the pantheon of gods in Hindu religion, one of the major. But I kind of want to go back a little bit and explain this the best that I can. And that is, right now we're going to be looking at mostly Hindu art, at least for the next couple of dozen slides. And Hindu is kind of an all-encompassing term, a name. It's the religion. It is the language. It is the culture. It is the people. So how does that happen? And the best way I know how to explain that is that in some ways, how culture evolves in South Asia, especially in India and Hindu culture, is that it's kind of like what we see in more ancient cultures. And that is where all of the aspects, all of the beliefs, all of the disciplines in a culture are all combined into one. And we've seen that a lot of times, and that's what kind of is in some ways a little, how should I say, it's kind of an easy way to explain sometimes, like the cave art. And we see their paintings deep inside of caves that they probably didn't really live in, but caves that were set up. And we kind of look at those as perhaps being temples, kind of a culture where the religion and providing for the necessities of life through the hunt. And if there is a belief in a higher power, a belief in an afterlife, all these things are kind of combined. You can't really separate things out. In today's world, we have very much separated our culture into various sections, disciplines, for example. And one of the things that had evolved in Western culture is the idea of a university. Whoa, that hits home. We're here. It's a university, and the idea being that the university can pull from all of these various disciplines that have over time separated themselves as a separate discipline worthy of its own existence. And it goes by its own rules, it goes by its own beliefs. And so that's the way it is in this day and age. And separating those ideas, separating disciplines from the core culture sometimes is pretty painful. For example, we just seen through Byzantine era and through the Gothic era in Western Europe, Christianity. But as Western civilization evolved, they had some problems along the way. They had problems when it came to understanding astronomy. For example, Galileo, a heretic, because he was talking about the planets and building on some other ideas with another astronomer, Copernicus. They kind of decided that the Earth was not the center of the universe and figured out that the sun was, that the Earth was not the center of the universe, not even the center of our solar system, that we are a planet and we revolve around the sun. Well, that ran quite contradictory to a lot of what was believed in Christianity at the time, that the Earth was the center of the universe and all of this other stuff rotated around the Earth. Science, religion, conflict. And so in Western culture, things kind of become disparate. They become their own disciplines. And you can say the same thing for basically philosophy. There's a lot of philosophy that contradicts religious beliefs. There's a lot of medicine, for example, that contradicts religious beliefs. And in fact, we got, even today, with the COVID vaccine, exemption for religious beliefs. There's that conflict. We're not all science, we're not all medicine. There are some people that are in the religious lane. So anyway, that being said, what happens in India, in South Asia, is that in many respects, things don't separate off as separate disciplines, not quite so much. As a matter of fact, they all seem to go inward, and there's an adaptability built into the culture. So things change over time, but they get absorbed into the religion, into the basic structure of the civilization. And Buddhism runs like that. Buddhism for a long time, 500, 600, 700 years in India, is its own belief system, its own faith. And it spreads out across South Asia, China, Japan, Korea, so on. Buddhism becomes actually the dominant religious belief. But in India, Buddhism kind of gets absorbed into Hinduism. And so that's the nature of the Indian culture. So anyway, why am I talking about that? This is Shiva, and this is Hindu religion. And like I say, one of the major gods. And so here we go. I got these in kind of a backward order. That's Vishnu. That's Ganesh. There's Shiva. Shiva the destroyer. And I put these in, and I was hoping that as we really took apart Christian iconography and talked about all of the symbols and what all of these parts of the iconography mean, well, in Hindu culture, this is like explodes. And in fact, in like a depiction of Shiva here, there's so much symbolism, it's just not a very simple thing to do. And secondly, these depictions really evolve over time too. But Shiva, the destroyer, and oops, previous. Well, before I get too far, let me show you that. +50 Lord Shiva images. And this is what I was talking about how these images change over time. They, in many ways, stay pretty much true to the origins, but they change over time. And so one of the principal deities of Hinduism is the supreme god within Shaivism, one of the three most influential denominations in Hinduism. So again, it's its own sect, it's its own denomination, but it goes back into Hinduism. And so we'll go back on this. Let's see. Let me pull this down. I'm so sorry. I need to do this through the share button. And let's do it this way. I'll go there. Come on, you guys. Why this is not sharing, I don't understand. And we'll go here. And no, not doing it. Oh no. We'll go with this. So here are, and I got Shiva, I got Vishnu, and I got Ganesh. And I'm going to kind of go through this. What you'll find almost in every depiction of Shiva is a trident. That's that three-pointed weapon. It's the same kind of weapon that we see with Neptune in Greek mythology. We also see it as the logo for a Maserati. Just saying. But that's where it comes from. And it says and they call it the Trishula, represents Shiva's three aspects of creator, preserver, and destroyer. And alternatively, it represents the equilibrium of the three guanas, Sativa, Rajas, and Tamas. And so you really, as you can see, start to really get into a lot of the layers and a lot of the levels of Hinduism, but it's one religion. The cobra represents passion and desires. By wearing the snake around his neck, Shiva conveys to all of his devotees that he has overcome his earthly desires. And we see that. The bull, it's here. The lion, the lingam, let me see, the third eye, you'll see that right here. River Ganga, it's very central and very sacred to the Hindu faith, and in fact, that's a ritual that Hindus practice, bathing in the river Ganges, the Ganges River. Bottom line, though, I want to kind of point this out. The idea of bathing in water that's really kind of fundamental to a lot of religions. Bottom line, you can talk about Christianity and baptism, for example. And so tiger skin, and you'll see that depicted sometimes as leopard skin, but the third eye signifies the destruction of the world of Maya. It is an eye of wisdom, and that's exactly the point. And you'll see in Hinduism, oftentimes practitioners will put that red dot on their forehead, which represents the eye of wisdom. It comes right out of Shiva. Rosary beads, carries a string of rosary beads. Whoa. Any of you Catholics know rosaries are a big part of at least Catholicism, and prayer beads actually, they make their way into Buddhism too, as well as other religions. So in a lot of ways, this is different. And in a lot of ways, there are similarities. And go back and think about all of that. The trident, the snake around his neck. See, and this doesn't really have all the symbolism, all of the parts of the icon, but there we go. And see, like the tiger skin, for example, this is leopard skin. Just say, they change, they vary from time to time and place to place. And the snake around his neck, the third eye, the trident, Shiva. This is Lord Shiva. This is Lady Shiva. This is Shiva, the woman Shiva. And here on their lap is Ganesh. And you can see as a symbol of the trident, he's an elephant. And he's kind of an elephant. He's a baby boy with an elephant's head. Whoa. Again, how many times have we seen these depictions of figures in the religion, in the belief system, like the Anubis, for example, in Egypt, where we see the Minotaur and the centaurs from ancient Greek and Mediterranean cultures. So this idea of a hybrid person-animal could exist here too. So I think one of my main points here is to say that this actually kind of falls in line if you know what to look for, if you understand this is iconography, and that everything they do has some significance, that it has meaning. And you can see here, she's got the third eye, and so I'll back up a little bit. I got some Shiva, and this is Vishnu, and it is comes with some other language, and I want to point this out. Hinduism is not a single well-defined religion in the sense that Hinduism consists of several schools of thought and tradition. All Hindus believe in a supreme cosmic spirit called Brahman, who is worshipped in many forms, such as Vishnu, Shiva, or Shakti. Religion to Hindu is the eternal search for the divine Brahman. So that's kind of like Buddhism too, that it mostly turns on being a better person, to find the divine Brahman, to find nirvana, etc. It's really very geared this way. So Vishnu, and that's who this is here. And there are issues, ideas conveyed in this depiction. And the crown, absolute supreme power, weapon of destruction of evil, protection of good. And so Vishnu, kind of the big major god, richness, lordship, and that's not unique to Hinduism either. As a matter of fact, if we move a little more farther into European culture, we would see kings that have a scepter or some other kind of instrument, an object that they hold, and it symbolizes their power and authority. The ocean of consciousness, manifest consciousness of complex universe. You see all of this. And spiritual seekers and devotees, the sound of Om. And you've heard that. That's a Buddhist chant and it's a Hindu chant. Like I say, these things all sort of kind of merge in Hinduism. Perfection, compassion, and beauty. It's got the lotus flower. And this is not in any sense all of the symbolism, but some pretty important, significant symbols that you'll find in Vishnu. And now I was talking about Shiva just a moment ago. Anybody know who Robert Oppenheim was? Okay, well, I'll tell you. He's considered the father of the atomic bomb. He was the guy that President Roosevelt put in charge of the Manhattan Project. They built places in Washington and Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and most famously, Los Alamos, New Mexico. And they assembled a bunch of physicists and other kinds of scientists, and they built the atomic bomb. And when it exploded, what did Robert Oppenheim feel when he realized he had opened a new door of physics and created a weapon that could potentially destroy the entire world? He quoted Shiva from the Vedic text, Shiva the destroyer. And I thought that was like so profound. Well, it shows that he was a learned man, but bottom line is that that is one difference in Hinduism, that they have a destroyer god. In Christianity, we have Satan, and in other places, we have other different kinds of evil. But bottom line, so this is Hinduism, and it's not a single religion, it's a bunch of things. Here's the other one. This is Ganesh. Ganesha symbolism and the hybrid, elephant, child. And so people ascribe the qualities of Ganesha to almost verbatim to the qualities of the Buddha. And so they change him around a little bit. We'll see an elephant be significant in Buddhist culture, but large ears to listen more, small mouth to talk less. Hey, that sounds like pretty good advice. Acts to cut off all bonds of attachment. That's what the Buddha did. Was born into privilege and saw how the poor lived and decided to give up all of his worldly possessions and comforts. Try to be a better person and to prepare his soul for nirvana. And so anyway, large stomach, peacefully digest all the good and bad in life. We'll see that in a lot of these Buddhas as we move through time. Big head, think big, small eyes, concentrate. Rope to pull you nearer to your highest goal. One tusk, retain good, throw the bad away. And so there it is. And you can see these are kind of the same issues, but it's kind of put together a little differently. Broken tusk, instead of having one tusk, the ability to keep the good and throw away the bad. Open palm, gesture of blessing. Open palm, a gesture of blessing. And have we seen that? Kind of. We've seen Christ doing the gesture of blessing like this. So it's different, and there are some very important similarities. And so he's got, in this case, got a candy, bowl of candy here. The sweetness of the realized self, enjoyment in life. The lotus symbol, that's this flower I was talking about, symbolizes the highest goal of human life. And you'll see the lotus flower adorn both Hindu and Buddhist. And so this is an interesting little aspect to it. We'll pull this up this way. And you'll see the mouse on a lot of these depictions. Desire, unless under control, can cause havoc. You ride the desire and keep it under control. Don't allow it to take you for a ride. And so that's kind of what we're talking. Sandra, you said something?
Did I? I'm not sure.
Oh, I heard something, so just checking. Anyway, and this is kind of an interesting. See, you'll see the same thing, but kind of explained different ways. It can be intellect, which scurries into every little corner. It can represent how the wise Ganesha does not look down or see anything as unworthy. Others say the mouse is an imperfect vehicle, just as our bodies are imperfect. The mouse is like a mantra that can cut through ignorance. So, a lot of many different interpretations. And these are pretty much major deities. And there's Shiva. This is the one we started with. And so that trident, we can see no tiger skin. Do have the third eye. And so this is a picture of Shiva too. It's kind of a little more difficult to understand, but one of the things that occurs in Hindu art is the idea or the depiction of multiple arms and hands. And that usually is one of the first things that people see when they look at Hindu art. And it doesn't really mean that these gods have like 4 hands or 8 hands or whatever the depiction is. It means that they can do more than one thing at the same time. And so going back here, I believe this was Lady Shiva, excuse me, that's depicted here. And so you see some of the same iconography, but no tiger skin, no snake around the neck. So, and so the ideas of depicting Lord and Lady Shiva, they're kind of real close together, kind of the same. And so what we get here too is this middle time where Hinduism and Buddhism all kind of coexist for a while. You know, it becomes separate and then gradually incorporated. But this is Chiatya Hall. And this is something that we start to see in Hindu architecture. And you can see with the archways and everything, it kind of resembles some of the things that we saw in Gothic architecture. And this is in just at the turn of the millennium. You say, whoa, how did they do that? We didn't get around the Gothic cathedrals until the 11th, 12th century. The reason they could do this is that they practice rock cut architecture. So they would go into the side of a hill that was primarily rock, most of the time granite, and just start carving away until they end up with a very large space for gathering, for worship, for prayer. And you can see this piece here. What does that resemble? A stupa. And so the stupa becomes kind of like the altar. We've seen that happen a lot. This is one of the ways that Hinduism and Buddhism kind of follow the same path. And you can see here that there is this space where you can circumambulate. That means walk around the stupa. And so you see that they're really quite skilled at rock cut architecture. And here is the second half of the 5th century. Rock cut, Ajanta, India, archways, stupa, kind of what you would say, kind of an exploded stupa, where it's not just the dome. But all of these levels here that indicate higher levels of consciousness, which is, this is the origin. I pointed that out in the great stupa at Sanchi. These levels of enlightenment actually morph their way as this travels to China and Japan as pagodas. And so anyway, elaborate carving relief on the columns. So my colleague, who also teaches this class, I had the privilege to get some insight onto how he teaches this class, partly because he designed the online version of this class, and a lot of what is in there is his lecture and the material and some of his writings on how he sees things. He calls this shared ideas, which is kind of a cool thing. Doesn't mean that one necessarily influenced the other. It doesn't set up that who came first, what's on second kind of argument. He just calls them shared ideas. And just based on the fact that some of these things happen across geographical expanses and over expanses of time. And oftentimes they share the same purpose, the same goals. And I'm talking about iconography, and we talk about the idea of circumambulation. that's central to Christianity. In fact, the Gothic cathedrals were all built around circumambulation. Circumambulation is part of Buddhism and hence Hinduism. And circumambulation is really kind of a holy practice of ritual. If you've ever seen footage of the Hajj in Mecca, and you see circumambulation of thousands of pilgrims. It's a great pilgrimage, and they do circumambulate. This is a shared idea. Nobody knows if one invented it and it was coincidence, one borrowed it from the other, or anything. But they are, and I thought that was the brilliance of my colleague. Just call them shared ideas. Similarities without getting into what our historians get into. It's like proof of contact, what the kind of things that we would call certifiable, and not so much interesting. What you would call, our historian terms, provenance. Where did the idea start? Who did it first, etc. And so, more avatar of Vishnu. And so here is Vishnu, and he's got a boar's head. Again, we're seeing a lot of shared ideas here. The idea of an animal head on a human body. We saw that with Ganesha. We see this here. And we also see these reliefs, these registers. This is in early 5th century, but in a lot of ways it's not unlike what we've seen in Mesopotamia 1,000, 1,500 years prior. Dancing Shiva, rock-cut sandstone. So I was pointing out the multiple arms. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that no 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. You know, just say it. Shiva can do more than one thing. And it's rock cut sandstone, and sandstone's pretty soft, which kind of accounts for some of the erosion of the relief. And we got the bull here, and we've seen that. And probably one of the biggest indicators of Shiva, the trident, the three-pointed spear. Shiva as Mahadeva, K1, another rock cut sculpture. And again, we're starting to see some morphing here. We don't see Shiva with the tiger skin. We don't see him with the snake. Don't particularly see a third eye. These depictions change. Vishnu temple, and this is not rock cut, it's actually masonry, and they put together these bricks and created this temple. Vishnu asleep on the serpent Nata. So, as I was talking about this representation of Shiva and how it's different, it's kind of stripped of some of those icons, caused me to kind of rethink some of the things that I told you in this course. And we looked at Christian iconography, and especially we looked at, you guys wrote about the Virgin Mary, and we talked here at length about the iconography of Jesus and those indicators that show that this is Christ. This is, in its own way, Hinduism morphs. It changes over time. And I was thinking about that Christian iconography in Christ, and I said, well, you know, that's an icon that changed over time. And I started looking up these depictions that really don't make the art history text so much. But there are many depictions of Christ. I looked this up, you guys, if you're interested, Christ as warrior. And you got Christ with battle armor and a spear. Now, scratch my head. I thought Christ was the Prince of Peace, which is another depiction of Christ. And he's dressed in royal clothing to indicate that he is a prince, or maybe even Christ the King, which is another depiction, or as Christ as creator, Christ as good shepherd. And I thought, Hindu depictions of their gods are very similar in that respect. They change over time, and particularly to what purpose you're depicting the gods. And the Christ the warrior, for example, that was really a big deal during the late medieval, when they were organizing people to invade Jerusalem. The idea of a Christian warrior to go back and reclaim the Holy Land for Christianity had to kind of make that compatible with the idea of love thy neighbor as thyself. So anyway, these things are kind of fluid, and there are other subtexts that inform how these depictions appear and how they change. And so Vishnu is getting some love here. Vishnu sleeping. And this is rock cut rathas. And it's from the second half of the 7th century. And these are, it's not just the cave, they actually remove all of the rest. And these are rock cut. Some of the stone is in its original form, but look at that. That's a level of skill that's, at least in my mind, quite impressive. And so they take an entirely different approach to their architecture, but you see that a lot of it is devoted to religion, which makes them similar to other cultures that we've seen, that religion is the central motivator and the subject of much of the art and architecture. Sometimes we get some other things involved, such as military issues, leadership issues, kings, queens, pharaohs, and so on. But in those cultures, oftentimes the leaders are also seen as gods as well. So Durga slaying the buffalo demon, Mahisha. Again, that could be a minotaur. That could be from many of the other cultures. And so anyway, what you see as precedent, it still shares many of the same ideas. The elephant, as I was saying earlier, you'll see the elephant as a recurring motif. For some, the elephant is the symbol of Ganesha. Some, in this case, it's really about using these animals as pack animals and all that's involved with that. And sometimes the elephant is a stand-in for the Buddha as well, and for a lot of the same reasons. Listen big, talk little, throw away your earthly possessions, know what to throw away, what to keep, et cetera, et cetera. Rock cut really. And here is another rock cut temple, second half of the 8th century. And this is all Hindu architecture, to be sure. And as you can see, this is kind of eroded some, but there we go. Raja Raji Sharva, Rajeshvara, excuse me, temple, 11th century. And so rock cut, simply amazing. And they really start to do this kind of architecture where they go up higher and higher. Have we seen that before? That's a shared idea that goes across many cultures. We see the minarets in Islamic places of worship in mosques. We see the spires in Christian cathedrals. We see the temples in Hinduism move higher, ever higher. And again, rock cut, amazing. Higher and higher. And I'm going to zoom in on this because I am curious about this. Okay. Yeah, there looks like there may be some passage up here. This looks like a place where one could go. I don't know about that though. Curious. Yeah. I want to kind of skip this one for modesty purposes. One of the things that we find though in Hinduism is that they don't really shy away from sex and gender. And so they produce all of these other things that have everything with etiquette of copulation and stuff like that. That's what that's about. Anyway, Shiva as Nataraja. Again, multiple arms. I put this one just because I really want you to kind of think about these as the icons of Hindu faith. And so here we are, we're moving towards Myanmar, which is what we call it now, was a long time called Burma. And it's directly south and east from India. So we go through India, what's modern day Bangladesh, and we go down. And we have these temples, and oftentimes they begin as Hindu temples, or excuse me, sometimes, yeah, they begin as Hindu temples and turn into Buddhist temples as the local population, the kings and so on, convert to Buddhism. But again, this is like 11th century. This is what I'm talking about. Higher, bigger, more elaborate. Borobudur, Indonesia. Take a look at this structure, and you can find some precedent, some shared ideas from Egypt and Mesopotamia, talking particularly about a ziggurat. But what you see up here on top, let me zoom in on this, is that in essence, this is a stupa, and it's surrounded by many other stupas on a very elevated plane. And you can see these levels are walkways, and you can circumambulate this, and these walkways stepped up like this, higher levels of consciousness, part of the faith. Sudhana visits Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is a figure in Buddhism where this person has achieved enlightenment and is eligible for nirvana, can die in peace and paradise for eternity. But instead of doing that, they choose to stay here on earth and become a guide for others to achieve enlightenment. And so that's really, these figures become pretty central. They become kind of a theme. They become kind of a priest. And there's another aspect of this shared idea that I think kind of overarches Hinduism, Buddhism, almost all of the faith that we've seen. And that is an idea of an afterlife. And that might have seemed like a pretty new and novel idea when we saw that in Egyptian art a couple of millennia before Christ. But that seems to be a theme with many of the religions, almost all of the religions that we've seen. And that in the afterlife, there can be a reward. Now, in Hinduism, there's an idea of reincarnation. And if you don't quite make it to Brahman enlightenment, that you have to come back and do it all over again. So it becomes complicated. But at any rate, the idea of an afterlife, right here, seated Buddha and hollow stupas. And this is in Indonesia. And we see the stupas, we see Buddha. And this was made for and is Buddhism. And we're talking about 800. So this is like almost 1,000 years or more than 1,000 years after Buddha existed. And so Buddhism becomes the prominent religion throughout, at least at this time. This will change in time too, but Buddhism becomes a prominent religion in much of Southeast Asia and in turn China. Bodhisattva, again, this is a kind of Hindu practice of multiple arms doing many different things. Thailand. Cambodia. In Cambodia, this is a kind of interesting thing too. Vishnu lying on the cosmic ocean, and we saw the depiction of Vishnu earlier in is classic. Wow. And we saw Vishnu on the ocean of consciousness. And that is, in a lot of ways, kind of representing that Vishnu is like really the one that covers consciousness in a way that the other gods kind of focus in a little more narrowly. And that may be why, at least in part, why Vishnu is seen as the supreme. And so Angkor Wat, Cambodia, you can see all of the accoutrements, all of the design of Hindu architecture and how, excuse me, how it's has spread. And probably as much as anything, I think I'd like to show you this because it UNESCO World Heritage Site. They know so much about this and they explain it so beautifully. I'm going to play it for you. And so, okay, I mean, make sure my folks at can see this. And let's see how this plays. Come on, guys. This happened at home too. Doesn't want to go big. Come on. Full screen. Come on. Oh, hey, what the heck? Why is this? I don't want energy. Come on. You guys have problems like that. That old internet. Anyway, I hope you can see this well enough. I don't know how much I changed this. Well, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna say, you guys take a look at this at home. Let's just be where we start off on Wednesday. I apologize for the technical issues. I don't get it. I was able to get it as big screen on my computer at home. These links are flawed or something. But anyway, Angkor Wat, what I want you to kind of see is just the utter magnificence of this temple complex and the architecture. And you'll find that it is Buddhist to be sure, but it has a lot of Hindu characteristics too. It's like perfect transition from Hinduism into Buddhism. And so with that being said, it's a little after 12. Any questions? You don't have questions. You did. See you then.